And we are live.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Hack Shack Studios and Hacks Chat. I'm your host, Art Thibert, and as always, I have Tag with me.
Hello. It's
And
me.
I think we're going to. I have these layouts, and I wanna show them off to you guys. So we're going to be a little adventuresome today, and Taylor's gonna break out the camera, and we're gonna try to give you an image of this. But I'm gonna give you a little bit of time um, to get in here and see um, where we're at. Stall for time, basically. Did anybody see the Comics Gate last night with Doug and Mike? That was pretty crazy. I want to talk briefly about that and then get into colleges. So enough stalling. Let's get into these images here.
All right.
You got it on there?
I do. Check this out, you guys.
All right. So is this?
Pretty cool.
So I did this as a commission. This is Adam Warlock, and I did that last night while I was listening to Mike and Doug go at it. And then this is the big exclusive and the thing I'm proud of.
Look at
I
this.
finally got a layout for the black and white issue 1 cover that I like. I did like 9 of these, so this is probably going to be the final. So I'll be putting these down on the actual board tonight, and hopefully be able to finish them by this time tomorrow. So yeah, so there you go. So let's get on to the show. So I hope you guys like that. I want to do more stuff like that, give you an inside on the studio and the goings on here. And I think Taylor's finishing up issue 3 of Super Sons, Taylor?
Yes, I am. I'm just getting in to check on the chat right now, so I'll be able to read your guys' stuff.
Yeah, she's setting up. I hope this is all working technically, because we're not too savvy at it. Taylor's a lot more savvy than I am, so she's putting all this together. I'm very proud of you, Taylor. You're doing a good job.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah, so this is way beyond me, all this technology stuff. Yeah, so while waiting for Taylor to set up her spot and everything, feel free to ask any questions as always. This is where Taylor and I draw at Hack Shack Studios, and it's Hacks Chat. So it's not just the 2 hacks here, it's all the hacks out there as well. So we consider you guys honorable hacks. So break out a pencil, ink, some board, and draw along with us. And like I said, get some questions, and we'll talk. I don't know. I was a little disturbed last night from the conversation on Comicsgate. I wanted to be part of it, and there's a part of me that is glad that I didn't, because it got a little messy between Mike and Doug. And for you that don't know what I'm talking about, last night we do these comics chat or Comicsgate chat, and Ethan Von Sciver hosts them, and a bunch of the Comicsgate guys, the artists and writers and things, come on there, and we talk about comics, and we talk about politics and anything else that kind of interests us. And so I guess Mike has been a friend of his, Mike S. Miller, had a friend of his that wanted to become a comics gator and wanted to publish with us and hang out with us. But this guy, I don't even remember his name, had one caveat, that he didn't want to be associated with Comicsgate. So in a nutshell, Mike just said, well, then you can't be part of it, because if you aren't Comicsgate, then if you don't want to affiliate with Comicsgate, that's what we are. It's like saying I want to be published by Marvel, but I don't want to be associated with Marvel. It's kind of a weird thing to request. like you're either part of it or you're not. The level of commitment towards it depends on you, but you shouldn't come into it with that kind of attitude, and you shouldn't expect anybody to embrace you in the community if you have that mindset. So I guess Mike has been having a little bit of online chats with this fellow, and this fellow blames Mike for the fact that he didn't get into Comicsgate, and now the guy's blasting all of Comicsgate in his Twitter and wherever else. So Mike engaged him yesterday. I guess it was kind of a marathon, but I think Mike was responding to the fact that this guy kind of wrote this kind of vitriol, like multi-paragraphed shot at Comicsgate, and kind of, inadvertently Mike as well. I don't believe he named names, but they were directed, and Mike knew who it was directed at. So Mike engaged him. A basic rule here is I found this out because that's what they told me to do when I was kind of, I have not been attacked to this degree. So I can't say that I can even sympathize, or I can sympathize, but I can't necessarily relate to the same extent. But this guy was, attacking Mike. And so, the basic thing is don't engage, mute, don't engage, just kind of shut them down, because if you don't give them anything to push against, then they have nothing to say. They have nothing to do. So do we need to turn that air, you think, on to keep that thing cool, Taylor? We have a laptop here that we use, and the thing overheats, and today's getting
maybe
kind
a
of
tad. It's
we're
making a
gonna
lot of
turn
noise.
we're gonna turn the air on here to cool down the laptop, so it might make a little bit of noise. So I hope you guys are okay with that. I'll talk louder and more deliberate, and this thing's gonna make a lot of noise at the beginning because it has to warm up. So anyway, so that was that. So then Comicsgate happened last night, and so Ethan asked Mike to read the letter that this guy had written, and so Mike did. And so the Comicsgaters basically were telling Mike that he should have just not engaged in it. He shouldn't have. He should just shut this guy down and not said anything. And so then Mike took that with a grain of salt and just kind of moved forward. And if you guys haven't checked this out, go check it out. It's on, Ethan Von Skyver's YouTube channel. And anyway, I'm kind of getting lost. I don't want to get into too much detail or seem like I'm taking a side or anything. But it was a general consensus of the Comicsgate community that maybe Mike should have not engaged this guy. And so, hey Taylor, can you put a towel under the dripping? It's on your back of your chair. Thanks. Yeah, it kind of, the air conditioner makes a little bit of sound before it warms up. It's okay if it drips as long as it's on the towel. Thanks. And so anyway, what ended up happening is Doug Tenapel started getting a little heavy-handed with what Mike should have done, and started almost berating him in a way about Mike's actions. And so then, and this went on for a long time. I mean, Mike dealt with it pretty well, but it was kind of a little bit of a beatdown. And those two are really good friends. And I must back up a little bit. Some of the most generous people I've met in the past 15 years are Mike S. Miller, Doug Tenapel, and currently EVS. I've never met anybody that was so willing to help and give advice and back your play as those guys. I mean, previously I have a bunch, of people that helped out, but currently these guys are the most generous and kind people I've met in a long, long time in this industry. So anyway, Mike eventually just blew up. If you haven't watched it, it's really hard to watch. It broke my heart. It really. Taylor watched it this morning. How did you feel about it, Taylor?
Yeah, it was definitely like difficult to listen to. I didn't actually see their faces, but like just hearing Mike's voice and stuff, it was really kind of heartbreaking.
Because what happened is Mike's a really spiritual, religious man, and he took God's name in vain because he finally broke. And I think it's a culmination of a lot of things with Mike. I'm not going to get into his backstory too much, but if you listen to um, his Aloha hour and just go to Mike's site, you can kind of start watching his videos and things. You'll get a sense of what's going on with Mike. On top of all this, Mike's a brilliant artist, and that Lone Star is amazing, and his funding and with all the fans out there's help, it just it's amazing. It's just amazing what this community does, and how much um, to people like you know me and everybody else, how grateful we are that we can start publishing books and start pursuing dreams that we couldn't do outside of the mainstream comics, or even like through Image or indie publishing houses, because we all have mortgages and we can't really take the kind of financial chances that maybe younger people can, because I have a mortgage, I have a family, and they have the same. So we can't really take as much of a risk financially as we would like to, maybe. And so with Indiegogo and Comicsgate and all the fans out there that are supporting us, we can do that. So I know I'm kind of going back and forth, but so Mike blew up. He took the Lord's name in vain, and he had an emotional breakdown. And I think that what Doug did prior was a little B-rady, but I think he also didn't seem to show too much compassion after the fact. So when Mike came back and things like that. So I thought maybe we would just briefly see what you guys thought of it. If you watched it, if you haven't watched it, I must say it's a little bit hard to watch, but go catch up, and Taylor and I will talk, and we'll see what you guys think in the chat. So let us know, what you guys are feeling, what you're thinking about this, because to be honest, Taylor and I have no idea of how we feel about this. I just thought maybe it'd be a little cathartic if we could talk about it, see how everybody feels, and then just kind of get it out of the way and then move forward. It's the only way I really know how to deal with stuff like this. And like I said, I don't really know how I feel about um, all this. So I wanted to kind of see what the community feels, what you guys feel about this as well. I think Taylor and I are pretty much on the same page. Do you have anything to add, Taylor?
Um, I guess I don't know. I really like Mike. I don't know him as deeply on a personal level as you, but I think they did their best to try to play it off as funny, but it really wasn't funny and it was kind of impossible to salvage just knowing how much like how spiritual Mike is and stuff. So they tried their best to salvage it, but if you do watch it, just know it's a very awkward, like stressful watch.
Yeah, and it in a way broke my heart. I keep thinking sometimes, if Edwin was there, if Edwin would have been the moderator. And I know Ethan tried, and Ethan did a darn good job of trying to skirt the issue. And Cecil has never been as genius as he was last night. Oh my gosh! If you ever think to yourself, oh, why is Ethan, or why is Cecil part of this group? Watch him last night. Holy whatever. It was truly amazing how he kept trying to kind of derail it and re-steer things. But I think Doug just kind of got his meat hooks onto the subject, and was somewhat unwilling to let go. So do we have any comments, Taylor? Is there anybody?
Yeah, the chat is weighing in. So Eric said, Art, I watched that last night. It stressed me out how Doug was knocking Mike for him to give the person money for his comic. I feel Mike should not be expected to give that creator money. And he also says, continuing, Mike's family comes first, regardless. If Mike got into a Twitter debate with the vet creator, Mike has his family and bills to care for. I am also still a bit flummoxed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to even take a side here because I love both of those guys. They're both my brothers. But I did just want to, I think if we just talk about it, um, and just see how we all feel. So, is there anything else? And
Just,
thanks, guys, for chiming in here.
yeah, if you guys have any continued thoughts about that, feel free. The DJ says C for Cecil. And I guess that's all the chat has at the moment. It is kind of a kind of not a fun subject. He also says, that is Doug. He doesn't want to let it go, and he will not let it go.
Yeah, I must admit I haven't listened to too much of Doug's show yet. I gotta, there's only so many hours in the day, but I want to start listening to his show. I've done a couple Aloha chats on Mike's channel with Doug, and he always seems, very, very supportive and very kind. And like I said, Doug showed me some early support on create your own projects. I put out a book through Image, 15 years ago, called, it was called Quantum Mechanics then, but it was changed because a lawsuit was threatened against me. So I turned it from Quantum to Chrono. And that first year that we were launching it, I met Doug, and Doug gave me all kinds of great advice because he was already a self-published, guru and had, a lot of success in that arena. And also he had success in taking his graphic novels and selling them in Hollywood, which was also, well, at the time it wasn't really a concern, but I think Doug planted some of those seeds early on. And Chrono got some support early on from Megan Casey at it was Cartoon Network at the time, so we were kind of along the same lines. And whenever I had questions, I could go to Doug, and he would, he basically mentor me. So he's always been very, very generous. And Mike, it's weird. It's all connected to Chrono Mechanics. That I published through Image, and then I had a second graphic novel I wanted to do through Image. And Mike, through Alias, he was a publisher at the time. He said, because the graphic novel was already done, so Mike said, "Hey, why don't you bring it over here and I'll publish it?" So he not only published the second graphic novel, but he also republished the first Image novel, and we broke it up into 4 separate books. So there were 2 48-page novels that we split them up into 4 individual, like 20 whatever page books. And we recolored them and everything. And that was all Mike's suggestion, and that was Mike taking a chance on me. Not that Image wasn't willing to, but they were a little bit trepidatious, and they weren't exactly as enthusiastic as Mike was. And I always go with people that are more enthusiastic, people that want to be, your ally, people that want to work with you, people that believe in what you're doing. And that's also, in a weird or in a roundabout way, why I'm here at Comicsgate. So is there any more questions? Because we can move on to the topic if you guys are kind of feel like we're done.
Anthony would like to know, Art, if you watched Ethan's or if you saw Ethan's morning show.
No, but did he have Doug on?
It sounds like he did. I don't know if it's still going right now or not. I didn't catch that, so. But yeah, I think we should probably move on. I think the chat is on Mike's side.
Okay,
Very
yeah.
much.
Well, I just wanted to give everybody a moment to chime in and to basically, just a cathartic, moment where we could kind of just, air how we feel about the stuff, and hopefully we can move on and everything will be good and as strong as ever. So, having said that,
Hmm.
college.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Ta-
art.
yes, go. Talk to me.
What do you think? Let me phrase it this way. Do you think it's necessary for all those aspiring comic artists out there that come to you for the portfolio reviews and stuff? Do you think that it's necessary that they get a college education or go to art school?
Well, let's not see what I think first. Let's see what you think first, since you're still a little bit closer to, educating and learning the craft. Since I'm a 30+ year vet and you're still kind of breaking in, well, I think you're beyond that, but you still have, stuff to learn. How do you feel? Because Taylor and I both have we have about the same, I think, college education levels. I think she probably had a better education than I did, but we both have about the same kind of um, experience with colleges. So go ahead, Taylor. Tell them.
Um, I didn't spend a lot of time at college. I went to a junior college for some time and dropped out once I started I used to tattoo. So once I started doing that for a living and I was paying for college myself, I kind of just dropped out because I was spending so much money on the college education and it wasn't serving me at the time. I think if I could go back, I would just to learn some skills, but I wouldn't be going for like a degree or anything, which I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's kind of how you felt in your college experience. So I didn't leave with a degree. Um, I don't know if it would have served me or not. It doesn't seem like I wanted to do comics and I wanted to tattoo at the time, and neither of those things required a degree. So I don't know if I would have benefited at all.
Would you say you've learned more just the few years that you've been working here,
Oh,
doing
yeah.
practical, day to day? She's working on board. She's actually doing, hands-on work. So this isn't theory or out of a textbook or anything.
I learned way and are still learning way more here than I think I would have even had the potential of learning at that college. Mind you, I wasn't going to like a Thibert school or anything, but even so, I think the practical experience, like you said, working on the board gave me more than I probably would have gotten, to be honest. So I really think that overall this was a better educational path as far as like a career in comics goes.
Yeah, I think there's doing, and then there's theory. So I think sometimes, like with art, there's X amount of hours that have to be logged in before you become proficient. Just like if you were playing an instrument or anything like that. So school school is good for principles and theory, but I think the application and the talent is going to come from repetition and doing it on a regular basis and keep trying to get better. My education is similar to yours as far as college. Um, I went to community colleges. So I bopped in and out of school probably my first, I mean, before I broke in professionally, but even when I was working professionally for about 3 or 4 years, I was still bopping in and out of like night classes. I mostly took life drawing courses at night, sometimes in the day, depending on the teacher and the area, because I moved around quite a bit when I was on my own. So, so I went to a lot of different community colleges, but I never set out to get a degree. I never, I just kind of knew what I needed or what I thought I needed to learn, and then took classes that would get me to that destination. So I kind of picked the education what I based on what I thought I needed versus a lot of extraneous courses that college tells you need to take for the degree. So I know Taylor. What did you? I mean, there was a lot of kind of BS classes that they forced you to take, right? So you could get your degree.
Yeah, I was going for a degree and you actually could get the degree at the junior college. Um I was going for one in illustration and I don't know if I should name the college the junior college I was going to,
I
but
don't think it's a problem if you do.
so Mount Sac at the time, which is where I was going,
That's the
it
whole title, Mount Sac at the time. That's the
yes,
name of the school, the full title of the school.
Mount
Mount
Sac
Sac at the time.
at the time.
Yes.
Um it offered, of all things, they had illustration and then they had 2D animation. You could actually get at least a certificate in that there, which is kind of strange. I'm sure they gotten rid of that by now. But midway through, when I was pretty close to getting my illustration degree, they basically told all the illustration majors that they would not be offering that as a degree anymore. You could still get it if you transferred to like a bigger school, like, like an actual college, but your credits would count for less, so you had to take more classes when you were there. And instead, they said, "Oh, you can apply your credits to get a." It was a graphic design they tried to get us to go into, and they're like, "Oh, it's basically the same thing." And very quickly I figured out it was not the same thing.
But there were classes that they also like pottery or like was 1D,
Oh,
2D, and just a bunch of classes that it didn't right that didn't you didn't feel
yes.
like you needed to be a better artist or to further um, where you wanted to be. They were just kind of it almost felt like cash grabby where they were just suggesting these classes um, to get more money out of you.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. There was I mean, people here who gone through the college experience probably know this, but yeah, they had, if you wanted to go for illustration, what the example I always use is when I first started, they, in order to get any higher drawing class like life drawing, they said in order to get life drawing, you have to take like drawing 101, which was like basically arts and crafts. And then in order to get into like another, you had to take that and then you had to take some kind of 3D class. So they wanted you to take ceramic or sculpting in order to do that. It was really weird. Like they filled out the um the process by which you, I guess, to get your degree. There was a lot of classes you had to take other classes, and most of them were not related at all. Like in order to get into animation, you had to take a 2D design class.
Yeah, I remember when I was trying to get into my first community college that they tried to get me to take all the basic college classes, and I think I was already starting to work professionally. I started off as an illustrator. I didn't start off in comic books. So I was working, you know, I'd go up to LA and I got jobs every once in a while. It wasn't steady work, but it was work. It was professional work. And I'll tell you that story some other time. It involves L. Ron Hubbard, not Scientology, but it involved L. Ron Hubbard.
Ooh, I love that one. We'll save
Yeah,
that for next time.
we'll save it. And so um, I remember them telling me, well, it was it. It was like basic drawing A and B or something like that at the time. But then I found out what the class was, and it's like what Taylor was saying. It wasn't perspective. It wasn't composition. It had nothing to do with really drawing. It was just kind of a lot of extraneous, like arts and crafty kind of things. So I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of time back then, and I still don't. The money's a little better, but I don't have the time. So I was working full time. I was in a rock band, and I had a full time, you know, girlfriend. So I had a pretty full schedule, and I was working part time as an artist. So I remember meeting with a counselor, and he said, "Well, that's how it has to be. You have to be." I go, "Well, what if I'm beyond that? What if, you know, not to sound arrogant, but what if I don't need those classes?" And he said, "Well, if you could prove to your life, because I just want to take life drawing." if you could, and I wanted to take life painting, like oil painting. And so he goes, if you can prove to the teachers that you don't need those classes, then, you have my approval. He goes, but you need those things for your degree. And I said, I don't care about a degree. I just want an education. And it boggled that guy's mind. Because I just didn't have time and the money to get a full-time degree. And also I'm not I have it hasn't been diagnosed, but I know I have some dyslexia, and so it's really hard for me to read and learn from textbooks and stuff like that. So some of that stuff was just kind of beyond me. So school was never like I was never strong in school. I never did bad in school. I still graduated with honors in high school and things, but it took a lot of work for me to do that. And so it wasn't something that came easily. It wasn't something that, I was really particularly good at it. And I just wanted to learn how to draw. So I went to the teachers there and I showed them my portfolio because like I said, I was already working professionally. So I already had a portfolio put together. And so they all signed off on it. They said, sure. And so I went back to counselor and I said, they signed off on it. I had a sheet of paper because they have to fill this thing out. And so that was my journey into community colleges. So for me, I tailored my community college and my college education based on what I thought I needed at the time. Like I said, I wasn't really geared up for comic books at the time. I was more illustration because at the time there was like Drew Struzan and Ansel and gosh, I can't remember, like Leyendecker. There was a lot of illustrators that I really, really liked. Um, Even Wyeth, gosh, what are those painters? I can't remember a lot of them, but I wanted to do movie posters and rock albums. That's when albums still existed. That's how old I am. So I wanted to do stuff like that. So most of the courses I took were illustrative oriented, painting, things like that aren't really applicable to comics as much, even though I feel like I have a bigger understanding of art based on those classes, but they weren't necessarily completely applicable to comic book art. I wish I would have taken more cartooning classes, even though I don't remember any of the colleges at the time having, you know, cartooning classes, but, more gestural stuff, more putting things down, figures down quickly. Life drawing got me prepared for that, but a lot of it was also just looking at the model. It was like most of my training was looking at things and drawing them, but in comic books you kind of have to make them up. So you have to understand figure work and you have to understand art on a deeper level because you're making this stuff up out of your head. You can reference, and there's no rules against that, and a lot of people do, and I do, but you kind of have to be able to on the fly make stuff up because you also have to move relatively fast. And I believe your education, Taylor, was more in tune with animation, right?
Um,
Or
it w
cartooning.
Yeah, I took a cartooning class. At the time, there was kind of a 2D animation craze going on. There we go. My mic was a little quiet, I think. Um, but what's the 2D animation? I'm sorry. Yeah, the 2D animation class and the illustration class is our degree. Like you pretty much took the exact same classes. So I took an animation class and a cartooning class because they gave me the same kind of credits, and they were the I guess the animation class gave me some credits, but that really was just for fun and curiosity. And there were some people that everybody was talking about, like, oh, this guy worked at Disney, so like I had to have his class once I heard that because I was interested. It was
So
fun.
your
Yeah.
education wasn't geared up to do comic books and animation. What were you pursuing at the time?
It was geared up to do comic books, but I didn't for some reason, well, I had been told, I guess, that I should get an illustration degree, and they actually promised me, like, we're going to do a sequential storytelling course, so you'll be prepared. And then that never happened, and they kind of just kept promising that like every semester.
Yeah.
And then eventually they were like, well, if there's enough interest in the cartooning class, then we'll move on to that. And I left before that happened. So,
Yeah, my daughter Amanda, she's, I'm her father, but I think she's brilliant. Um, she's going to Laguna Art and Design. She's starting her fourth year, so she's going for a degree, but her degree is in fine art, and she wants to do gallery work. She wants to do, painting work, and so I'm just surprised that even on that level, how many classes that she's required to take that have nothing to do with where she wants to be. Like, like there are ceramics classes and different things, and the problem I also have with school is sometimes they'll go, this isn't available, so then they suggest, like, oh, well, this life painting class isn't available but would definitely benefit you more than anything else you could take. How about a pottery course, to take its place? Or how about, landscape photography? And it's like, what the hell does this have to do with me painting figures? What does this have to do with me painting stuff for galleries? I understand you need a well-rounded, art, you know, education. I understand that, but sculpting or like pottery and photography, I mean, there was a time when maybe you needed to study photography. This is my opinion, but there's no film, there's no developing, there's no f-stops. These cameras aren't as complicated as those cameras. I mean, it took art and skill to make those cameras work and get good images in the past, but this is all digital. Like, there's no film involved, and it just, these aren't as high tech of cameras as they were. And also, I mean, if you're taking photographic reference for paintings, then you know what you want, aim the camera in in the direction that you want it to be in, and then just push a button. Like, I don't know how much this really has to do with the art form of like painting. But anyways, like this semester she's going into, I guess next week actually, she's, I think there's only one class that she really wanted to take, and that would really further her education in where she wants to go. The rest that she was kind of had to take just for credits to fill in, you know, so she could get a degree. And I do think that some of these schools are a little bit, I don't know. I don't know if it's pyramid scheming or if it's blackmail. I don't know the proper term for it, but it seems kind of underhanded. It seems a little like, we have you here. Um, let's get some more money from you by not giving the courses that you really need, but like some of these more BSy courses. And that's just kind of how I feel. She's dedicated to it. She wants the degree, and to be honest, my wife and I want her to have a degree because I think this is where the other side of it comes into. Do you have anything to add, Taylor, or does anybody have it
um,
before I go off on another
yeah, before,
aspect?
okay, please continue. But Title says, it's just kind of funny because he was on the same wavelength. Says it sounds like it's designed to get you to pay more, essentially holding the degree you want hostage, which I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's like, hey, we have this over here, but we're gonna kind of try to milk you for as much money as possible. And the thing is, I saved up. My wife and I saved up early on for Amanda's education. So we saved up money, and then we put it in investments. So by the time she got college age, and we did this when she was born, that she was able to have that money. And then she's such a awesome kid that she got, and she's continuing to get scholarships. So we haven't paid any money. I mean, we paid money out of our pocket, which is the money we saved, but it's not like we're paying money out of our pocket right now, because with the interest that was raised in those investments and stuff, it's compensating for the scholarship money. And so she hasn't taken a grant or any kind of support at all. I mean, we're paying for this all between her hustle to keep her grades up and get her, scholarships and things like that, and the money that we saved when she was young. So we're in better position than most. But if we didn't have that, she would also come out of that school with maybe 50, 60, I don't know, maybe more thousands worth of debt, you know, to start her career as an artist. So an artist it's a lot of hustle. There's a lot of work, and there's not a lot of money in it initially. I would say you probably have to spend at least 10 years, unless you're really, really gifted, and hit instantly. You probably have to devote 10 years into what, like painting or gallery work or comic books or whatever it is that you want to do, before you have significant payoff, or like independence and a good life in the industry, a solid footing in whatever, like I said, arts that you choose to get into. So, it could take you that 10 years or longer to pay off that debt. So I feel it's a little difficult to start off with that kind of pressure and that kind of debt in a profession that might not pay you off instantly. Um, like lawyers and like attorneys and doctors and stuff at least have a promise of making like crazy money, but also they have way more debt going into it as well. So they have the same problems. But I do believe this is the other side where, well, I do believe, before I go on to the other side of the college argument, is that if you hustle and you don't have that debt, I think you can I think you can do just as well. I think if you really want it and you really hustle, you can get there. And then, I mean, how do you feel about that, Taylor? Do you feel like you could get there? I mean, well, that's what you're doing, but you like hustling and working every day and trying to get better.
If I said no, it'd be really concerning, huh? Um,
I feel you want to say no, though.
no, I don't.
Yikes, we're getting into controversy now.
No, I think if you're going into a trade like art, especially like comics, of course, but I think any kind of freelance thing, like tattooing, definitely, because I guess there are some schools emerging for that, but I really don't feel that's necessary. That's a whole other topic. Um, I think that you can benefit from an apprenticeship a lot more in a lot of ways without going into debt, like you said, because that debt can stay with you for so long, and it can just keep increasing, and you just end up in a hole. Like there's people I know, like I have a friend, I'm not going to say her name because I don't know how she'd feel about this, but
Say it.
I have a friend that went to art college, and she got an illustration degree, and they promised her at the time that they would help set her up with a job, which is what they promise a lot. And so, she graduated, and the counselor would call and bring up the jobs that she had available, and they weren't even art related jobs. They were like, oh, here's a job at like a place. There was one for like kind of related, like an Aaron's Brothers, which I didn't even know were still around. And then there was like restaurant jobs, like jobs as like a waitress.
So there is placement, but not necessarily in your chosen profession or what you have a degree in.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, they didn't necessarily lie, but it's like that's not what you didn't get a degree to work as a waitress. Like that's, and then so then on top of that, like she did end up finding a job that fit her career, and she's doing very well, but it took a while, and it wasn't a job they hooked her up with. She had to hustle, like you said, to find it. And but she still has that major debt. And I really think the job that she has, since it's a trade job, it's like making custom vinyl toys and stuff, so it's a lot of pulling molds and stuff. It's a trade job that I think she could have gotten without having that debt.
Could she have learned it on the job?
I think so. There are I'd have to ask her. I don't want to speak for her, but I think it is something that that she could have learned on the job. And it's honestly, from what it seems, she learned the basics of that trade kind of on her own, and then when she did get the job, she got better, and now she's more at like the professional level because they kind of trained her. But I don't think she even really got, like, leaving the school. I don't think she got the skills necessarily from the school to get up to that point. I think working on the job is what got her higher up to where she is now.
Yeah, and I think that that's the value of hustle. I think a lot of it has to do with hustle and your drive, and you're willing to work at your craft and get better all the time. I think there's a lot of books that you can learn and read, or learn from and read, that can get you maybe like the school, like to, in lieu of the schooling, that can get you where you want to be. The Loomis book for like figure drawing, and the Bridgman book. The Bridgman's great for like structure, like real structural stuff, like how
Mm-hmm.
to think of things in form of like levers and gears and pulleys and stuff like that. So it's very mechanical, but it's cool because I think you can relate to it more because we understand how like machines work, maybe more than we understand how the body works, because the body is way more organic and way more complex. And so he breaks things down in that way, like levers and pulleys and stuff. And uh and then Loomis is just like rhythm, flow, like balance, like just beautiful, like anatomy and figure stuff. The Hogarth book is always recommended as a like a book for comic book artists, and it was when I was younger. I'm not sure if it is as much now, but I think it's because he had cred as like the Tarzan guy, and he had a foot in comics or comic strips at the time. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have merit. His book on folds is really, really good. Like I think that's the best book that Hogarth put out. How do you feel about that, Taylor?
Yeah, I think that was I was recommended that book when I was going to school, and I agree. The best book is definitely I forget
Drapery
the
and
actual
folds, I
name.
think.
Yeah, where it just shows you how to, drape people in clothing, which you'd be surprised how hard that can be when you're starting out and you don't know. Um, yeah, I think these days he's kind of infamous for some weird female anatomy, but when you're first learning, it's not a bad place to start.
I think there's some stuff that I've taken from his books, like just like memorizing certain muscle shapes and muscle groups, um, and that have stayed with me from his books, his teachings. But the folds I thought were really good because he teaches rhythm and how they work. And you should see those drawings; they're insane. The folds in that book are insane, and um, and then he's got kind of names for them as like muscle groups, stress folds. I can't secondary folds. Like he's got like names and ways to think um, about how clothing, like loose clothing drapes on a figure or tighter clothing drapes on a figure and all that stuff. And I think that's his best book. But I think you can self-educate. I did, and Taylor is. And to be honest, I still go back on those books every once in a while. And I think coming back, like reading and rereading these books over years is good, because as you progress, there's light bulb moments that happen. And so when you go back and read these, you can go, oh, that's what he was talking about, rhythm and balance, or whatever it is. And maybe you weren't able to comprehend it at the time. That's another thing about school too. Like, you're only going to get out of school is what you can comprehend at the time. So a lot of that is theory that you might not even clearly understand or be able to bring into your work until years later, but you have to remember that stuff. Like my daughter, they don't even give her textbooks. They just give her assignments over the internet. So she doesn't even have the benefit of going back on a textbook. I mean, if it wasn't for, like, I have a library here that she goes to, But the school doesn't do that. They just kind of give them digital files of what to work on. So, it's going to be hard for her to even go back on this stuff. She'll probably inherit my books in time, but without that, I don't, know what she would do. But my plus for comic or colleges, like this is where I think colleges are good, because I don't want to seem like I'm totally blasting, colleges. My daughter's in school right now, so obviously I don't totally despise them, but um, there's a thing that comes out of colleges, and it's a peer group. So you're going to school with a bunch of like-minded people. So if you're going to a good enough school and you're good enough talent, you're probably going to be hanging out with the upper 10% of your class. And that's what you should also try to do, is hang out with the people that look like they're going to be movers and shakers. I mean, hopefully, that you bond and that there's a good friendship there as well. But it's kind of bonding, and these are going to be the people that are going to move up the ranks with you. These are the people that are going to maybe suggest you for jobs, maybe even be able to give you jobs in time, be able to say a good word to somebody, and you can do it for them as well. So it's a give and take kind of relationship. And there's a college out here, and Taylor will know it, and I'm blanking on it. It's the Disney School
Oh, is it Art Center?
Art Center, and it's where a lot of the animators go. And so Disney recruits from that school, and so if you go to that school and you're kind of in that upper 10%, you hang out with, all the potential movers and shakers for the next, 20, 30, 40 years, then when you get out, those things will happen for you. Case in point, a lot of those Pixar guys all went there, and that they all found each other after they graduated. And they didn't all graduate at the same time, and some of them didn't even go to the school at the same time. But by going to that school and either meeting each other or knowing of each other, and or just, like I said, going to that school, when it came time for them to look for new talent, or when it came time for them to build Pixar, they knew what that criteria was at that school, and they knew what talent that school put out. So in a way, if you had a degree from that school, or you had gone to that school, then it was credibility. It they would go, okay, this guy knows his stuff, and they wouldn't even have to question it as much. And I think that's the benefit of colleges, because it's like if you're going to be a heart surgeon and there's a college that turns out the best heart surgeons in the country, and you go there and you get your degree, you're probably going to have a lot of people that want to hire you, more so than if you went to a Joe Blow school. I mean, you could be a great surgeon, but they're just not going to know. They're not going to give you that benefit of the doubt that they would if you went to this other school. Like we have Blizzard out here. So Blizzard at Amanda's school at Laguna College of Art and Design, they recruit a lot of that talent for the video game stuff. But my daughter doesn't want to do video games. But Laguna also has a lot of galleries in their downtown beach area, so she can get something out of it that way too. So there is kind of this forethought that you can give, like things that can benefit you down the line. So it's not just an education in the moment, but it's also possibly having that degree from a prestigious school. It doesn't have to be like, you know what I mean, like Ivy League stuff. It depends on what you want, but as long as it's respected in your trade, wherever you're going, whatever you want to do, then it can benefit you in those regards. But like we already pointed out, there's still the debt, and there's still, it's iffy if you're even going to, what kind of education you're going to get out of that, because just because you go through the the curriculum and you go through the 4 years, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be a good artist. It just means that you fulfilled the obligations of the school. So that still comes down on the individual. So I always think this because I remember when I was going to school and they tried to convince me because like I said, I went to community college for 7 years, not even on and off. It was constant. So before I broke in and even during, all my illustration years and then my first 3 years working as a comic book professional, I still went. So I understood like life drawing. I understood certain things that I needed to take. So the education can benefit. It can benefit you, but you just have to be careful and just know what you want out of it before you get too involved, because you can get into a lot of debt. And like Taylor was saying about the Thibert school, I'm not knocking the Thibert school, but I've had 3 different people that have apprenticed here at Hack Shack Studios, and they all had significant debt. And within the first year, they all said the same thing. This wasn't like I solicited this response. They just gave it up and said, "I'm getting a way better education just working here than I did 3-4 years at the Thibert school." Like I said, I'm not knocking the Thibert school, but you know, this is more direct. This is more like we're doing it. This is practical knowledge here, versus like taking a course in lettering and a lot of classes that you don't necessarily need to take to get to where you want to be. I always say draw a line, the direct line to where you want to be, and then just whatever is extraneous that doesn't help you get there, then just put it on the, put the blinders on and just kind of keep moving in that straight line. You'll get to where you want to go faster, and you'll probably be more proficient at whatever it is that you want to do art wise. So, what do you have to say, Taylor?
I could have saved so much money not taking that stupid astrology class.
But now you know about the stars.
I don't remember a single thing. I feel like I forgot out of spite.
See, that's something like all the math classes I took and everything. I keep thinking, why? I don't even remember most of that geometry and trigonometry, all that. I don't even remember most of that. So why did I take those classes?
The worst lie is what they tell art students when you're learning all that. And then they're like, you'll use this in your art. Like, I'm sorry, Susie. It's been like 10 years and I haven't done that once. Still
Yeah.
waiting.
Yeah, I got 30 years involved here, and there's a lot of things that I learned or that they told me I needed that, you know, I never really needed. I had artists or teachers that would tell me is like, you really shouldn't go down the line of like doing comic book art because it isn't respected, and it's looked down upon, and it's kind of like the bottom feeders of art, artistry and in illustration. And then I was like, well, thank you, I appreciate your input, but I disagree. And then he's like, agree to disagree. So the next day I brought in uh, Frank Frazetta's work. I brought in his paintings, his sketches, and his ink drawings. And he's like, what is this? And I go, this is a comic book artist. And he's like, oh, okay. I take it back. And I know there's exceptions, and he's definitely really, really, one of the exceptions in this industry. But I, gosh, just look contemporarily, Ivan Reese, Sean Gordon Murphy. There's a lot of seriously gifted artists in this industry right now that could probably do anything art related if they wanted to, because they have such a good foundation in the basics. Um, you know what I mean? It's just kind of, some of it's also the school has like the snobbery depending on what the degree is and what you want to do, because I know I faced a lot of that. A lot of people look down on comics. I think we're living in a different time where comics is a little bit more respected, but when I was going to school it definitely was not.
Jiminy Cricket says, it's the same no matter where you go to school or for what. Practical experience in a job is always better than going to school. However, most people can't get that pro experience, so school is good. I don't know. I got
Yeah, access. Yeah,
it.
accessibility is important, and I do believe that it could be two pronged too, because I can't necessarily uh, say that the artist that I am now didn't come out of schooling, because there's one thing that I have a footing in that I never would have if I didn't take, what is it, art history or art appreciation? What is that
Oh,
class,
there's
Taylor?
two. There's both. I forgot about art appreciation as a
Yeah.
class.
So everything I know about Europe and I know about the masters and I know about all those things were from those classes. So any kind of commonality I would have with people about, Peter Paul Rubens or, any of these masters, obviously Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci and all that stuff, I got from that class. I mean, I probably could crack open a book and do the same thing, but I did retain that stuff. And if I ever get into small talk with an artist and we start talking about the Louvre or the Met in New York City or whatever it is, I have a footing, I have a foundation. I can talk to them about some of those things. So I wouldn't have had that if I didn't go to those schools, because I seriously, like I told you, I subscribe to that direct route. Like wherever I need to be, I figure out the quickest way I can get there, and then I just try to take out the extraneous detail. So I probably, well, I can honestly say I never would have pursued that. I never would have bought a book on art history or any of those things if I didn't have those classes. So some of the knowledge and some understanding that I have that goes beyond um, even comic books, I got from the school. So there are merits. You just have to decide, if the 4 years is worth it for you. And I hope that Taylor and I, if there's any aspiring artists out there, that we could help, that this helps a little bit. There's a lot to consider going in, and I think it depends on your major. But just to sum up, and then I'll let Taylor have her sum up, is that you don't need a college degree to do comic books. I've never had any editor say, "Well, what's your credentials? What's your education? What school did you go to?" Any of those things. It's it's solely merit based. So if your artwork kicks butt, then that's your resume. That goes beyond your school. That goes beyond everything. I always say this because I remember I had a teacher. It's like, well, if two people go in for the same job, I'm mocking him with my voice right now. Two people going for the same job, they're going to hire the one with the education if you both have the same artistic skill. And I had a problem with that then, and I still have a problem with it now, because what two artists draw the same? Like, you're either going to fit the criteria more based on your style and your skill level, then you're going to be based on that. So there could be two artists, and maybe they're just as technically proficient, but they're totally different in their styles. That editor, that art director, or whoever it is going to hire you based on what they need, not your education or that you're both qualified. They're going to hire you based on what you need. So if it's a Hulk editor and you're going in there and there's two guys and maybe one guy can draw Spider-Man like amazing, but he can't draw the Hulk, and you can draw the Hulk but not maybe a great Spider-Man. If they're looking for a Hulk artist, they're probably going to benefit, they're probably going to lean towards you, that draws a great Hulk versus the other. And so I think it's more merit based, at least comic books is. I can't speak for other professions. I mean, I did illustration as well. I worked 2, 3 years in illustration, and nobody ever asked me my credentials or what school I went to or any of those things. They really do look at your portfolio and what you can do. And I've had some people, at conventions, and they ask for advice. They go, "Oh, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? And there's so much competition, and it's hard to get, like, noticed and things like that. And when they say specifically, or when they more or less say that Marvel told me they're not looking for people, or DC told me they're not looking for people, what they are saying is they're not looking for people like you. They're not looking for people on your level. But I always use this analogy. If you came in and you were Travis Charest level, or you were something like that, you were like really, really, really good. That company, if that is indeed their policy, that they're just not hiring or whatever, and that's what they're doing, they will look at you and they will make the exception, and they will go, let's find this young, aspiring artist a job, because they know that the competition is going to do exactly the same. And so they're going to want to swoop you up, and they're going to want to work with you because of your talent, and they know that you're going to be able to sell books for them. And I think that's the bottom line. I know it's an overstatement, and how do you become the best of the best? You work your ass off, and hopefully that you have some kind of gifts that you were born with, that you can fall back on, and then build off of that. But if you're really, really good, the exception will always be there. So I just tell people, like, be really, really good. And I know that it might sound arrogant, whatever, but you will always be the exception if you're really, really good. So just always strive to be the best that you can be. Try to be the best, or better than the next guy. Not compete in a really, like, destructive way, but just in a way that gets you into an upper tier place where somebody would see your work and it would be undeniable. Like, they would be stupid not to hire you. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, how did I say no to this guy? This person is so amazing. We don't even have a title for him, but we'll make a title. We'll make a book for him so we can use his talents. So that's kind of my wrap up. What do you have, Taylor?
Um, I 100% agree with that. And I think that it can be hard to maybe accept that your artwork isn't on that level if you're getting turned down a lot. But if you are getting turned down a lot, it might be time to look at your portfolio. And I think that, at least when I was in school, the worst bit of advice I received from a teacher, I guess, well, for me, it was the worst for what I wanted to do, was like, as far as a portfolio, she kind of told me, like, oh, you want to have all kinds of things. So my portfolio was super eclectic and kind of didn't expand on anything. And yeah, I think, like you said, Art, if you're applying for, like, a Hulk job, you shouldn't have a portfolio that has like really unrelated things to that in it, because it's really just not tailored towards what you need.
Yeah, the closer I think you can get to what an art director wants or needs, or the company is looking for, the better. So go ahead. I'm just plussing.
Well, there's one thing you said, and I didn't want to gloss over it because I think it's a really good observation that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is the peer group thing. Because it really, I don't, people who take online classes and stuff, I feel like you're more like straight for the degree kind of thing. But I do feel like you kind of miss out on that peer group thing, because it is way more important than you might realize to make connections with people um, that have the same majors as you or have the same kind of focus as you. Because even in a small junior college setting like I was in, I know two like people that were friends of mine back in college that work at Cartoon Network now, and you never know where people are going to end up. And it really does. It's, I guess comics are kind of a small industry, and artwork in general is kind of a small industry, and you do kind of want to make those connections because you can collaborate with those people at a later date. And as far as careers go, like, there's not a lot of other jobs where people can relate to you, like working freelance art. Like I'm sure that you can agree with this art. There's not a lot of people who really understand how it works.
And it's daunting. Don't get I mean, I grew up pre-internet. I never even had access to people like what we're doing right now. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
didn't even know what a professional studio looked like. And all publishing was done in New York. There was very little work. There was no comic book work here, period. So if you were going to be a comic book artist, you had to live on the East Coast. I live on the West Coast. So I already had like a major mountain to climb, as far as that's
Mm-hmm.
concerned. And just back on your point about the peer group and stuff and going to these schools, like Taylor said, even if it's a junior college, I met Trevor Scott, the Trevor Scott, eager extraordinaire now. He also pencils brilliantly. I met him at a junior college life drawing class in the South Bay here in LA. And we just started talking. He's 10 years younger than I was at the time, maybe even younger. So he's just starting his career. I was kind of he wasn't starting his career, he was starting his schooling. I was inking Adventures of Superman. So I'm still like a year into my career or a year or two into doing comic books. So I'm still a newbie as well. And so I was getting behind schedule, and Marvel started asking me to ink stuff. So I was taking on more work. So I had my Adventures of Superman work where I was doing finishes over Dan Jurgens, but I was also giving, what is his name, Terry Shoemaker, on some X-Men annuals. And then I actually started helping out on some of the Art Adams X-Men annuals. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe it. So I was kind of getting inundated with work. So we just started hanging out and just talking about art, and just so it's kind of a peer group thing, but then one thing led to another, and he started hanging out in the studio, and I showed him a couple things with the pen and with the brush, and he adapted to it quite well. So he started coming over, and he's not a drinker, so I'd buy him lunch, because we had this place called Fat Face Finners, and oh my gosh, those burgers were so. It was an Irish pub in Hermosa Beach. And so we would go over there and eat lunch, talk about our dreams, and then come back and throw some ink over Dan Jurgens or Art Adams. And so we took that little venture, and then we started inking like 3 books a month. And so he started making some money, and he was still continuing his education. I was still going to school with him as well, but he kept kind of going more and more into where the money was. And so he stopped, going to school, and started working at Hack Shack Studios full time. And then, a few years later, he's working at Wildstorm. Well, he's working at DC Comics. I got him work at DC Comics. And then, he asked me if he could go over to Homage, and when Jim Lee was building up the Image stuff. And because he was already, the studio was already assisting on a lot of Jim Lee stuff anyways. We were doing a lot of background work and stuff for Scott inks, and those things. So he asked my blessing. I said, sure, go over. And I had Danny Mickey at the time, and we just kind of kept going with the studio. But the thing is, it's kind of a peer group, where I met Trevor, and we built Hack Shack Studios in the early days. Based on hanging out at college, at a community college life drawing class. So yeah, never underestimate those kind of connections, like Taylor was saying, because sometimes they can lead to other things. A lot of times they do. So hope we helped. Do you have anything else, Taylor, you want to add?
Hack Shack alumni for life.
For life.
One
For life.
There is one thing I want to bring up, and it's the fact that you were going to that college while you were working on Superman, because if I was going to that college and I found that out, I would have fainted.
Nobody cared. I never told anybody either. Because that's funny. Because I would have too. Um, I was kind of incognito. I just took the classes, and I never really talked to many people. And Trevor and I just, when you'd have your breaks, because life drawing classes are long, so you'd have like a little lunch break or whatever, and we just started talking. And so it seemed like he was like minded. So then it came out that way, but I never really volunteered. Maybe I should have. You know who I am?
I think that, like, I don't know, you guys need to talk to everyone at college because if there's even a small chance that you could be talking to like an Art Thibert type, then you'd be pretty lucky.
Yeah, thank you. That was very sweet. I appreciate it. But yeah, you never know. So be kind to everybody. Talk talk among your peer group, and you never know where people are going to be. You never know where you're going to be as well. Like I started off trying to do illustration. I ended up in comic books, and it was better. It was a better illustration, with digital technology and stuff. Illustration to the degree that I wanted to do it went away, and also rock album covers. I mean, the art on these CDs is so compact discs is so small. Who cares about the art direction? And also, everything's downloadable now. The artwork is totally inconsequential. It doesn't even matter anymore. So I think in the long run, I back the right horse, because I think comics, especially with Comics Gate and all this stuff, I think there's still uncharted territory. It's still a new frontier as far as I'm concerned. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I still think there's a lot of room for growth, and I think there's a lot of room and places that we can take it. So anyway, I think we've been going for a while. I should I should end this and let you guys go. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks for supporting us. If you have friends that are aspiring comic book artists, or friends that just like to hear people rant about comic books, uh, if you could please suggest coming over to our YouTube channel, like, sub, hit the bell for notifications, and let's build this. Let's get this community going. So thanks again, guys. Enjoy your Saturday. Take care.
Bye.